Okay, greetings. Oops, can I center myself a little better? Greetings and salutations. I promise I'll get back to Dune. This has been kind of bugging me. I don't know, bugging me. It's been on my mind for a little bit now. I've seen a lot of threads and things and folks who have been grousing about getting lost and considering or having already considered to jettison getting lost from being a thing that happens when they're running wilderness adventures or traveling. And I think it's a mistake. I understand where people are coming from, but I also think that one, especially if you're running a hex crawl, I think you lose a lot of the of the things that a hex crawl gives you if you decide you can't get lost. Because once you get rid of getting lost, that navigational element, you're kind of becoming a point crawl. And there's nothing wrong with a point crawl. If you'd like to run that way, you absolutely can. And a lot of systems, like I think the One Ring, kind of runs their wilderness travel as a point crawl. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But I think that part of the experience to me of being an adventurer is that getting lost stuff, finding yourself in a place and thinking, I don't know, I don't know where this is, and I don't know how we got here, kind of thing. As my chair decides to start to drop, I'm looking for the wilderness stuff here. Hey, Ken, getting lost is half the fun. Exactly. I do believe that. But and of course, there's no way for me to know how people write things. There's always a thing with the discussions or um, the discourse around a lot of these procedures is you have no way of knowing how people are actually running it. Ugh, let me fix my chair here. Hold on a second. We've no way of knowing how people are running it. So I could go down some tangent about this, that, and the other, and people aren't, maybe that's not how they're doing things. And if they're not doing things that way, if they're doing things a different way, then the other part comes up as well. What kind of maps, if they're doing a hex crawl, I don't know what their hex crawl is like. I don't know what their hex map is like. If we switch over to our handy dandy, this my my favorite my favorite hex map, and this is from just a random, essentially, Reddit thread from ages ago where somebody posted this. If this is your hex map, um, there's a lot of open space here, a lot of open space, and unless you're going to be generating a lot of stuff, I can I can sort of empathize if where's my favorite? You're going to Miwin, you're starting in Miwin, and you're trying to get to Lomandende, and you're just kind of doing this. You're in these grasslands, and maybe you're starting to get lost, and so you're just kind of spinning your wheels. And if you haven't really done much with this area, then it's kind of like, what are we doing? I can totally see that. Like, what the heck are we doing over here? The party wants to get to here. The GM, as the referee, the GM, I want them to get there. I did not think to put anything out here. I don't have. Maybe there's not supposed to be anything out here. So why am I engaging with this mechanic to get lost that is just causing me pain? It's causing me pain as the referee. It's causing the players pain because they're not advancing, and it just seems like a really big drag. Man, buddy, pal, right? I hear you. I feel you. However, I will say that just in terms of tropes and things, people do get lost. And as Ken pointed out, getting lost sometimes can lead to more fun and interesting things than not getting lost. Getting lost means you're going to encounter things you didn't mean to. And as a GM, this is a way for you to bring in all kinds of threads, themes, world building stuff that wasn't straight on the road to whatever place the party was intending to. Who knows what happens if they end up down here? Maybe they end up getting on the wrong, if you imagine, maybe there's some trails, some old roads, maybe they end up at this dungeon instead. Maybe they think, okay, we're going to leave and we know where we're following a road and it's going to cut, and we know it's going to cut through this kind of area to go here. Maybe this is the route. We don't have any roads on this map. It's the route. Uh, but wants to know why the party is encountering herd of bison. Yeah, this could definitely be a Great Plains kind of layout. I mean, the Red River Challenge, Dorla versus Lamende. Red River, was it the Red River Shootout? Is that what they call it? Was that Texas, Oklahoma? In any case, you can end up with some interesting stuff. But I can't know where you're starting out from as a GM. And I've recommended, and lots of folks have recommended keeping your hex maps smaller and then maybe spending more energy stocking the hexes that you do have than making some giant hex map that's going to give you this huge region. And now you've got all these kind of, quote unquote, empty spaces to fill. And I think empty spaces can, I don't, some people, I know I've heard some people say, hey, there should be no empty spaces. There should be something somewhere. And I hear you. But I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. I mean, I think that if you were to go out, I think it's totally fine to say, go into some stretch of desert, let's say, and then tell me obviously this is going to depend on your size, your hexes. I've been enjoying 3-mile hexes lately. That's kind of been where I'm at. So we take a 3-mile hex, which I think is, I forget how big now a 3-mile hex is in terms of square mileage. If you go with, let's go with 6-mile hexes, because I know now it's 30 some odd square miles. I think you could find some patches of 30 some odd square miles of desert, let's say, that are going to look pretty much the same. And that's part of it, right? That is part of the challenge of the desert, is you're not going to even know necessarily you're lost because everything looks the same. You're going around some dunes, or maybe you're on some rocky stuff, and you can't really point to some kind of landmark because there isn't one. Because all the dunes, eventually you're going to get in some dunes or whatever, they're going to look kind of samey. And that's part of the challenge. Part of the challenge of the desert is, how do you get through without getting lost? The other part of the challenge, of course, is the water, food, and stuff. But if you take the getting lost part out of it, you're going to be able to calculate how many days you're in the desert, how much food and water you need. So that's not going to be, of course, you could have a random encounter or something like that comes along, some wandering creature comes and sucks the water out of all the water skins or breaks all the barrels of water in the car. Of course, you could have something like that. But a lot of that challenge is, hey, we have 8 days of water and we hope we can get there in 8 days, kind of thing. And not getting lost kind of, it really gets rid of that kind of big challenge. Who says Centaur Rohan of the Sea of Grass? But that would actually be pretty darn cool. Oh, the Centaur Rohan. But I have some options for you, I guess. I have some options. I have some ideas that we'll see if we can sort of flesh out a bit. I was looking for where some of the things are here to plug in. Here we go. I knew it was here somewhere. So we have a couple things. I was just gonna, let me see. How do I do this again? Let me print. Okay. I hit print screen. I hope it didn't freeze everything, but it might have. All right, let's just. All right. So let's just throw this here. So we've got the lost part, right? This is our classic getting lost. Obviously, in clear and grassland, that's harder because you're going to be able to see further up to it a certain degree. But still, if there's one town here and then 30 miles away, there's another town here, and they're not connected by roads, and you're thinking, I'm going to cut the difference, there's going to be some point where you're not in contact visually with either town, either settlement, in which case you're still looking at a very confusing thing, because let's say you're in kind of a Great Plains sort of thing. Maybe you have some landmarks far away. You'll be able to see them. There's a mountain or some kind of major hill or upcountry. Maybe you can see that, but you just might be out in the middle of, it's just grasslands, man. And you're gonna have a clump of trees here, a clump of trees there, but they all kind of look the same. They're not perfectly situated to yourself, so you can get lost. It may not be true if you're within visuals basically of both at the same time, but certainly going back up to our thing here, you're going from here to here, assuming these are kind of 6-mile hexes, you're going to get in here and you're not going to be able to see either one. Oh, thank you. Bo says that the area of a 3-mile hex is 7.74 miles. Awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah, about 7.8 if we round up, or you can even round up to 8 if you wanted to. I always think, these things are never, to me, it's all about abstraction, and approximation. We're just doing guesstimates kind of thing. So 8 miles, 7 miles, 7.5 miles, whatever floats your boat, right? It's good. I think it's good to know the numbers somewhat. I think for 6 mile hex is something like 31, 32 square miles, just so you can keep idea of the area, because it's easy to lose track of. You might think with a 6 mile hex, like, boy, this hex here is nothing at all. It's only 6 miles. But then when you look at that area, it's like, no, it's 32 miles or so in here, or even 3 miles. That's 8 miles. You got more real estate in here, even within a hex, than you might imagine. And you're not traveling as a crow flies. You don't have GPS. You don't have a compass usually. So you're kind of eyeballing it as you're rolling around in here. So you're not going straight pew. You're going dee 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 dee. Maybe you're going back and, oh, where did this? And you're sort of doing like this. And maybe if you're really good, you'll get a more or less a straight line. But you're going to be, and plus you're probably trying to follow if there are any trails, game trails, places that those are places are going to be easier to just to travel down. So you're probably going to follow those, and those aren't going to be running strictly east west or any kind of cardinal direction. So all kinds of reasons why having that extra space, and acknowledging that extra space and understanding within an extra that there is a bunch of space there, I think also helps with this idea of, well, it's one thing if you think I've only got 6 miles, I just got to cross it end to end. Boy, that seems super fast. But now you're like, well, it's actually 30 square miles in there, and there's stuff in it, right? Grasslands doesn't mean that it's just wall to wall grass, though it could be. It could be a Great Plains kind of thing, or a steppe sort of thing where, yeah, it is just, but there's going to be woods and streams and hills and all kinds of stuff in there, and that stuff is also going to cause you to probably shift directions. You're going to have all kinds of reasons why you're even if you start off with a perfect heading, you're not going to be able to keep it, which again, why you might get lost. You're a crow. If you're a crow on their, oh, you had a rank patch in the Navy. That's awesome. Does that mean you were in the crow's nest, Bo? Is that what that means? What is that? What does a crow patch in the Navy mean? My uncle was in the, what was he in the Coast Guard? But I don't remember him having any specific patches. He was on a light ship. He was posted on the light ship outside, or that was in the Boston light ship back in the day. All right, so here we got these just general speaking laws. So what I want to do here is let's not call it lost anymore. I'm not going to call it lost. Oh, here's the other thing. And I think I see this happening a lot in many ways. And that is, and it's not a fault thing. I think a lot of it has to do with how we look at the game. I think it happens more often with folks who are coming to the game as adults, which I think most people are now. It's probably something. I mean, I'm sure there could be some interesting stuff written. Like I think that during, say, the '80s, late '70s and the '80s, that I guess that second boom of D&D. So the first boom, right? D&D comes out in '74, and it picks up steam, and things are doing it. I think that first wave, is not all way. I'm not saying 100%, but I think a lot of those folks were folks who are already in kind of wargaming. Those would have been the first people to have been exposed to these things because they were part of the groups that were developing it. Because a lot of the people who were working on the game and created the game were part of wargaming groups and all that stuff going on. So you got the kind of wargaming from the '70s, right? That first wave, wargaming kind of thing. Then through their various iterations, through Holmes and I guess '77, and then through the original BX line, and then the Beckme line. I think the audience is getting younger, or the new folks coming in are skewing younger. So you go from sort of adult war gamers, whatever, and it's trickling down. So you have folks like me who were born in the '70s who got first exposed as like an 8, 9, 10-year-old to the game in the early '80s. And that was kind of where I came in. And there was a bunch of folks like me who came in at, not at the exact same time, but in that's kind of similar time frame. And I think when you come into it as a child, or it's kind of innocence, one, it's like having a new player. But when you come in as, I think, as a kid or as a young person, it's like you don't have a lot of the things that can hold you back from just embracing the game in all of its weirdness and oddities and everything else. You're not worried about it. You're not analyzing things. You're not reading into it. You're just going like, "Oh, okay, this happened. Great, let's go." Or, "Okay, this happened. Great, let's go." Oh, this is happening, right? You don't get the stuff. And I think now, maybe because of the way technology and just where we are, even the younger people who are picking up the game a lot oftentimes are picking it up with a much more critical eye, which can be good. I think that's great. And I think a lot of innovation has come out of all that. I mean, that part of the whole OSR bit is beyond the first part where it's just, hey, we're just cloning the old stuff to make it more available, is folks really coming in and interrogating the old stuff and coming up with new stuff and continuing to come up with new stuff. And a lot of that is through analyzing and seeing how the old stuff works, weird quirks, and seeing like, was this quirk just because a lot of the stuff is just done by feel and just like, it seems to work, so we'll do it. Feels right. And then looking and saying, well, maybe we can do something better, right? A lot of that stuff we have all benefited from as part of the kind of the overall OSR movement. But what it also means is I think people read too much and just get too much into it. And I think I talked about this last time, not last time, I talked about this last, probably when we're going over the dungeon mechanics, when people will get super just granular or just get super into trying to determine, well, how long is the turn? Exploration turn is 10 minutes. Things take 10 minutes. That takes too long. So I'm going to try to break it down into fractions or this, that, or the other. It's like, no, don't do that. You don't need to do that. If you want to say that a turn is 5 minutes and that's what works out for you, great. But just leave the turns alone. Let the turns be what they are. It doesn't matter. As a kid, you don't question any of that stuff. It doesn't matter to you. You're not trying to figure out why is the something's broken here because the cleric progression isn't, pin straight. It's like nobody cared when they were a kid playing it up or whatever. You just played it. And I think the same thing with getting lost. This is a way roundabout way of saying that. I think the thing with getting lost is I think part of it is a lot of people are just taking it way too seriously in a sense, and and finding all these kind of objections that may be coming from the real world or their experience or whatever. And I think part of it is just, hey man, just let it be. It'll be fine. It will work. It has. I'm not even saying like, hey, you must use it. Okay, if you don't want to use it, don't use it. It's your game. Like, do what you want with your game. However, I think there is a usefulness to it, and I think some of the objections, while they may seem smart, are either not as smart as I think, not as smart as maybe they seem on their face, or it's just taking something which ultimately is a mechanic and a game thing, and just trying to dig too far, dig too deeply in it, further than you need to. Because remember, we're travel in general is abstracted. We're not asking people to do things like you would in a real wilderness travel setting. We're abstracting a lot of that away. And when we're doing that abstraction, it means that we're sort of getting it, we're not seeing, we're zoomed out. We're not seeing all the details of what's happening. So something like getting lost and what that looks like and what that means is we don't, the mechanic doesn't tell us exactly what it means because we're zoomed out. All they can say is whatever happened, however it happened, you're off course. Is that's the classic getting lost. You've gone off course. Does it mean that you just walking straight and all of a sudden you went no and just turned and went walking off? No, of course not. You as the referee, as the GM, are supposed to decide, looking at your hex map and kind of get or and just a sense of maybe the context of, well, what does it mean if you're in hex 2016 and suddenly you end up going, you mean to be going, say, the course is 2016, 2116, 2217, and then you end up veering off this way. You as the GM are supposed to interpret what that means. And maybe you look at this and you say, well, this is blank grasslands. There's no reason at all what this happened. But remember, that's just the zoomed out satellite view. The ground is going to look different. The ground is going to have all kinds of things going on. There are forests and there are rivers and there are streams and there are lakes and there are ponds and there are divots and there could be ravines and rock falls and all kinds of stuff going on in here. You just don't see it on this map, but that stuff doesn't mean it's not there. And that stuff being there is why your party got driven off course. Yeah, they wanted to go this way, but this way, wherever they were trying to do this kind of crossing here was blocked. So they start to go around, and as they're trying to go around, they just lose track of their direction enough. So instead of dipping back down, they kind of dip over and they find themselves in here. you look at it that way, it's like, oh, well, that makes some sense. And you can role play it out if you want to, but the system, it's being abstracted. It's working on multiple hours and hours of travel. So it's not giving you that decision of, hey, what do you want to do? But you could do that. And that's kind of what we're gonna talk about. And Bo says that wild grass can get 12 feet tall. Yeah, that's not even looking. I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of, and you can get into, right, where, whoops, you can absolutely, depending on what your vision is for those grasslands. Yeah, grasses can get extremely tall. There could be all kinds of things going on as to why you can't necessarily. Now, that's, in terms of visibility, but it also could mean that you're trying to avoid these large stands of grasses. Maybe it's bugs, maybe it's other things, whatever. There's all kinds of reasons why you can get lost, but you were supposed to do that. The mechanic is just giving you a very broad overview of this is generally what's happening. You're supposed to fill it in. And I think a lot of folks don't try to fill it in, and they just look at it and say, like, well, how could I get lost in the blank hex? But the hex, even though there might be anything in it in terms of points of interest, isn't blank. A green hex isn't a flat, just concrete with green painted on it. There's all kinds of stuff going on here, and you were supposed to take that and do this. But I think I can help if that is the problem. And I don't even know that's the problem because people don't usually get into it. Unfortunately, most of the threads I read, people are just like, yeah, I hate getting lost. I've gotten rid of it too. So I don't know everyone's different objections. If you here are watching this, obviously, if you're watching this later on a recording, then, well, it's too late. Well, no, you send me a message and we can discuss it later. But if you're in here and you're someone who has jettisoned it and you have reasons, I'd love to hear the reasons. I'm not, no shade, right? You don't have to like every mechanic, but let's get into it a little bit more. Oh, so I want to, let's see, Bo talking about his crow rank patch. Okay, petty officers have a crow. Oh, 1 to 3 chevrons. It does have to do with the crow's nest. Look at that. Got it. Bo says they're too creative to leave well enough alone. Like to know how and why things work. I mean, that's not. I'm really saying. So I guess I don't mean for people to not be curious. I think you should want to see how things work. But I think sometimes okay. So here's what I'll say. I think sometimes we do a bunch of theory crafting of stuff, and without ever just trying it, and we can lead ourselves astray by theory crafting ourselves into corners, I think, or into these things. So let me give you an example. One I read not very recently. This was a while back. Someone was running, I think it was Deep Carbon Observatory, which is an adventure I'm not super familiar with, but I guess there's some element where I guess it's at the beginning of the adventure. You're going down, I think you're inside some kind of ravine or something. You're kind of going down. Okay. And this is more of a dungeon turn. I think this was a dungeon turn thing, not necessarily a getting lost thing, but the same similar principle applies. And the person who was running this thing, the GM, determined that, well, this is not that's not enough. That's not fast enough. This is, the movement per turn too slow for my taste. So I had the party move, I don't know, twice as fast or something like that. So they did it. Okay, they moved twice as fast. Then they realized when the party got down to it that there was stuff that never got to happen because he essentially had them double time without cost down this ravine. And so then he's in the threat, and then he's in making this post like, I did this thing, and I don't know, and I forget exactly what is, his, if he was trying to solve for something, but it was the idea was, well, you could have just left it alone because ultimately this idea in your brain that they're walking too fast or too slowly, it doesn't matter because you can change those turns to whatever time makes sense for you. The point is keep the turns. If you don't like the time, then sure, make them 8-minute turns, make them 5-minute turns, whatever. That part doesn't really matter too much. But by breaking shattering that kind of this sort of dungeon turn economy because you thought that it wasn't fast enough for your liking, ended up messing up that part of the adventure that then can't be undone. So I think at the end of it, that their post, they were sort of disappointed, oh, it didn't, whatever. Some interesting things didn't happen because of this. And it's like, well, you probably could have not, you probably could have not messed with it. And so it wasn't a matter of, I don't want you to don't look at how this works, just do it. No. But I think don't be so quick to kind of throw away the baby with the bathwater kind of thing. Hey, understand how it works. Great. You're not sure you like it. Great. Try it. try it, see how it works. But then also understand what it's doing. I think part of understanding that what lost means, understanding what getting lost can mean or should mean, and thinking about that interpretive part. Like it's not just like, oh, we're lost. It's and what does that mean? But what does that look like in the game? What does it look in the fiction? Thinking about those things. But I don't want to get kind of away from myself here. Bo says the wilderness turns an hour, or is it just my thinking from wargaming? That is your thinking from wargaming. There is not, I do not believe that there is a set. I don't, so one of the things that the expert set doesn't do, which is a bit of a shame, I don't think, unless I'm missing it, is they don't set times. You basically get, they're doing everything in kind of miles per hour, right? So you move so many miles per hour, and then they don't give you a kind of a turn thing. So you can really make, if you want to use a turn, which I recommend doing, is having, and this is, I'm not advocating something that's unknown. People have done marches and watches and have made different units of time. I like a 3 hour. I've been doing a 3 hour kind of turn because I think you can leverage basically the same kind of dungeon kind of turn economy, I guess, as I just said, outside just as well. But you need to kind of set some of that up. And of course, if you're using a hex map, you already are kind of doing part of it where instead of moving squares, you're moving hexes, and you could say over so many turns, you're moving so far, kind of thing. But there is not a hard and fast one. Different OSR rule sets now will kind of, I think a lot of them will give you their some kind of unit. And like I said, I've been doing 3 hours. I like, fits in with the kind of 24-hour day. Some people like, I think I see a lot of people doing 4 hours. I like having a little bit more of those sort of, I wanted to have more segments, so I like the 3 hour, but whatever feels right for you and works in a way if you want to do that, which I do recommend. Michael Fraker says, well, first, hey, Michael. He says, crap they worry about come up in when I'm DMing is not the crap that actually does come up. Yes, I think that's the thing, right? We end up worrying, end up theory crafting and worrying about all kinds of stuff and deciding why this or that doesn't work and this is why and and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, at all. And especially in the wilderness travel thing, because if you were going to get in the details about it, one, you get in the weeds in terms of the realism. If you wanted to get into kind of realism things, people get lost all the time in even having a lot of the stuff we have now, GPS, phones, high quality, highly accurate maps. People still get lost, right? People get lost on the highway. Okay. So it would not be unusual if you're forging a path through essentially terrain that you do not know intimately well to get lost. And I remember reading something, I think it was in a book. There was a humble book bundle, and I looked at it so you can check out the stream. I think it was called Bushcraft, and we read some parts of Bushcraft. And one of the stories in Bushcraft was the author, I think it was in that book, talking about how they saw somebody get lost literally within stone's throw from where they parked their car. They parked their car, went in some woods, and just got turned around, and literally were getting lost. And this is something that is, I don't even think all that unusual. I think we've oftentimes we might have gone something coming in the mall, and suddenly like turn around like where the heck? I mean, I remember when one of my friends came to visit me in New York City ages and ages ago. They were used to driving around. They were from Houston. And so they spent all their time navigating in their car. And of course, in New York, not that you can't drive around, but I don't really recommend it if you can avoid it. And I didn't have a car at the time, and he had flown up here, so he didn't have his car. He's walking around, and he got lost all over the place in Manhattan, which is essentially a grid. And if you've ever come visit New York, you've ever gotten lost, it could totally happen. I think he ended up in Central Park, and one of the things is he went to the museum. He went to the, I think he went to the Metropolitan Museum, which is on the east side of the park. And I think his idea was to go into the park from the museum and then go down and get out at the bottom of the park, the southern end of the park. That was his plan, which is a good plan. It's a beautiful walk. It's not too long, and I've done it a billion times. Somehow he got, I don't even know how he did it. So he left the museum into the park, and somehow went around and around and around, ended up coming out where he went in. He totally did a circle. And this is in a park with paths, and he still just got turned around. Like it totally happens. So why can't adventurers? I mean, look, even explorers, people who do this stuff for real for a living, get lost, especially when a lot of this. I mean, I imagine if your map looks something like this, that a lot of these areas might be more or less uncharted, or like the Pacific Northwest, or even though it's kind of charted, nobody's spending a whole bunch of time in here, so nobody really knows that much. Like, oh yeah, we know the forest starts here, and we know it ends. This is still kind of foresty, ends over here, but man, there's whoops, I'm not trying to move that. But you know, what's inside there, maybe an airplane full of money. I don't know. The ghost of Bigfoot. I don't know. Nobody knows. Oh, this is just watered down apple cider for the working man. Okay. So what I'm thinking is, let's not call it lost. Let's not call it lost. Let's call it misadventure. Something has happened. Oh yeah, that right. Michael Frager pointing out about that the plane group, that the famous Bermuda Triangle, which is, and it's happened a few times with planes, and whether you want to believe in the Bermuda Triangle stuff or not, but yeah, flew and totally ended up going the wrong way and ended up. I think they finally found them. It was actually in the swamp. They actually had kind of ended up going in a totally opposite direction. I mean, there's stories like that all the time. Now, I'm not saying that because it's real, it has to happen in the game. But what I am saying is that we probably shouldn't object to getting lost because it's not real, or that somehow adventurers, particularly low level ones, are somehow above getting lost. Why? Professionals get lost, happens a bunch. It Adventurers shouldn't, and a lot of and you get, and that's where a lot of your hijinks can come in from getting lost. Okay, but we're going to call it misadventure. Let's not call it getting lost. Now, I've been on kind of a D6 trip, so I'm just gonna put some. I just want to put in my. Gonna I know. Let me pull something else out of this book here. So I'm going to pull this out. I don't think we're going to use it, but we'll have it kind of for reference. Let me see if I can do this again. Okay, pull that out. All right, so we could put that down there. We've kind of got that here. Okay, so we're going to call it misadventure. So what can happen is you can roll for misadventure. And if you want to turn this into a player-facing die roll, like some kind of navigation check, which I've been kind of doing lately, I think that's fine too. If somebody wants to be something like in the One Ring or what other games, people take on roles. If you want to have a navigator role, and then they can kind of be the trying to get that direction out and sort of going, you can. These numbers, I think Woods doesn't kind of get I always struggle with these numbers. The reason why I struggle is what I appreciate about these terrains is that they kind of, I mean, this one doesn't quite show it as well, but they sort of go from easy to hardest. I mean, get rid of ocean, but basically, clear and grasslands, easiest. Wood, first level, if you want to put that at first level, second level. I mean, they kind of jumble these around, but if you look at maybe the encounter, if we look at the encounter table, maybe a little bit easier. It's not. But basically, I feels like it kind of goes first level, second level, third level. I feel like there's kind of a progression. It's not listed this way, but there's kind of a progression going like from clear grasslands, kind of to woods, then maybe, hills, then maybe, barren swamps, jungle, kind of mountains, desert on it. So you kind of, I always feel like there's this kind of difficulty where mountains and desert are kind of the hardest, and you can swap them around, but I kind of like that. But it does mean that I think that woods is a lot more, is not as easy to navigate through as I think it comes up in the game. And probably mountains and barren and hills are not as easy to navigate as they should be, because maybe if you're in a mountain, you feel like you can climb the slope of a mountain and get a good view around, but you could also be in all these craggy. I presume you're in these kind of valleys and things where you don't get a lot of view. You just don't get a lot of angles. I mean, yeah, if you look at a mountain as you're on this kind of singular peak looking around like Lonely Mountain, you can look and be the Lord of all you survey. That's one thing. But if you're in the Alps or in the Appalachians or in any kind of mountain range like that, the Rockies, something like that, and there's all kinds of valleys and things and the whatever, like you just can't, what can you see? what can you see if you're trying to go through some narrow pass in between these two slopes? What can you really see about where you are, where you're going? I'm not sure, but this is the way they set it up. So I would say number one is fiddle around with these as much as you want. You might say, to what I think it was Bo that mentioned, hey, grasslands and those kind of plains can have grasses that are 12 feet tall. You might want to split these up. You might want to make clear one, because clear is basically like it's been domesticated. It's your farmland. It's been the turf has been mowed. The grasses are cut. It's your pasture lands, your farmlands, or just your where basically a civilized some kind of civilized society, some kind of culture has come along and basically flattened everything out for their purposes. So that's definitely would be your kind of bottom level. And if you want to take grasslands and put it up a level and raise all those up, feel free to do that, because this is kind of your big thing here in terms of triggering how often you want to get lost. And you can also do things if you want. Do you want to modify it by trails? Are we assuming they're on a trail? Are we assuming they're bushwhacking? Because that's going to affect things too. If there's no trail at all and they're bushwhacking, then you can get turned around, and you can, you might start to get turned around, and then you hard to remember even where you came from, depending on how you're moving through. Whereas if you're on a trail, you might say, well, at least we can backtrack and we're not just completely bamboozled. We've got the trail. We can try to, if the trail ends, maybe it comes to a watering hole and it's a game trail. We go, well, this is probably, maybe we realize it's not where we want to go. We can go back, or we can forge around it, whatever. But you have more of a lifeline, if you will, to kind of like, okay, we were on this trail kind of thing. Hey, McJack. Hey, Terrence. Dire aphids? Yeah, it could be. So I'm going to use a D6 roll, okay? But you don't have to. You can use whatever if you want to, especially if you want to weigh these results. Weigh them away. But I'm going to start with the D6 so we can go from there. So remember, we're not calling this lost. We're calling this misadventure. We're going to use these same rolls if you want, but again, amend them, append them, tweak them to however makes the most sense for you. And we're gonna. So now let's roll some. Let's put some things in here. And I'm not even sure if I have 6, but I'm just gonna start filling them in with things that I have. So something that being lost can mean is basically your progress has been slowed, which means is this hex. I call them expedition turns, so I'm just going to use my thing in here. All right, actually, let me write this differently. Okay, so here's one, right? Your progress has been slowed down. You're not lost, or at least you're pretty sure you know where you're going. However, slow down. What can that slow down mean? Well, could mean many things. Remember, these are all abstract. At some point, we can make more tables. We can do all that, but at some point, you're gonna have to take these and figure out what they mean in the context of your particular campaign situation. But what does that mean? Your progress must slow down. Well, maybe you're following a trail, and that trail is not going straight as an arrow, or even just with a slightly curvy arrow. Now it's doing lots of switchbacks. It's maybe there's some elevation things. You're going up, you're going down, you're going back, you're going forth. It's following its own route, and it's still more or less taking you the way you're going. But now instead of going, remember, inside of a hex, you're going like this. Now you're going in some kind of loopy, whatever thing. So, that's it. You're still going to get across the hex, but it's going to take longer. So that's one. We'll see. Bo says they've never been lost, never been disoriented before. Oh, been disoriented, but never lost. I know where I am. I'm right here. I don't know where everyone else is, but I'm right here. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever been super serious. I mean, I've definitely gotten lost. I've never been lost in kind of a, thankfully, in any situation that hasn't taken me, or I haven't been able to figure out where the heck I am fairly quickly, but I've never been like overnight camping or gone on some hike that was off trail, or somewhere gone into a national park or somewhere where there's really you could really get super lost. I mean, I think it's scary as all, get out. Okay. So, there's an obstacle. And here's the other thing. Let me just point this out. Uh these are all very, as I said, abstracted. Okay. But they're also, use them as an invitation if you want to role play it out. If you want to role play it out and make a choice, say, hey, you're on this trail and it's moving through the woods, but now the trail seems to be doing lots of switchbacks and it seems to be very inefficient. And yeah, it's generally going what you want to be going, but now it seems to be diverging from the course, at least the course that you think you want to be on. What do you want to do? Right? Do you want to continue to follow? Do you want to continue to follow this trail and give them the opportunities to start making choices, and then you can roll and do things again. I think the thing is here too is everything, and I guess this is what I should say about getting lost too, right? All these things should be invitations to explore a situation. Hey, you've gone into a wrong hex. Well, what's in this hex? Probably, I hope maybe something interesting. And yeah, you can have some empty hexes, but I think I think more or less, I want to have probably. I think I would probably go with the logic of maybe only a third of the hexes are truly just empty, that there's something there. And it could be a lair, a bandit camp. I mean, if it makes sense for a lair, monster lairs can be anywhere, right? A bandit camp, I don't know, it might be there, it might be something else. Maybe there's some demi-humans, some fae, an old necropolis. Throw a ruin in there, whatever, generate something. Maybe there's a chateau or a stronghold that's out there. There's all kinds of fun stuff you can throw there, and that's an invitation to do that. I wouldn't look at it as like it's a failure. Yeah, the party got lost, but their failure to navigate shouldn't be turn into a game failure. Hey, Mark, that's probably maybe a really important thing that I wish I would have thought to say earlier. Just because this test came up a failed result doesn't mean that the table should feel a failed result. These are all things that are invitations for more adventures. So you should treat them as such. All these things are invitations to interact with different things. And so use them. Maybe it could be something as much as a chance for an enemy to intervene in somewhere, to make their presence known. You could have all kinds of fun with what these things mean, uh, you know, but I just don't, I think if you just get rid of it, it's just a lever you're taking off the board that you get to pull, or that gets pulled. It's a gear that you're just popping out. And I think use the gear. And if you don't like what the gear is giving you out of the box, when that light comes on, something happens, like, I don't like what happens after the light turns on, then reroute some cables, have it do something else. You don't need to just unplug it and turn the light off. Brian says they got lost hiking into a campground, was carrying a pack full of firewood, so he tried to take a shortcut. I remember racing the sunset and climbing up and down massive sand dunes, exhausted. Yeah, I feel you there. I've never done that, but I can certainly picture it. Yeah, I mean, you can, you know, and that's a story that you remember, right? I mean, in our lives, hopefully, it's all mundane and fairly easy, and so that becomes a story that you recall. You probably don't remember all the times you did something and just walked back to camp, but you remember the time that you got lost and heard weird noises, and the sun's starting to set, and you got this firewood, and your back is aching, and your legs are tired, and you're starting to sweat, and the bugs are coming out. Right? That's what you remember, and you could deliver that to the party, and you can make it more fantastical to suit your game. But these are the kind of things that you should make that should be memorable things, and not just like, oh, we didn't get to the place on time. Like, what a bummer way to look at it, in my opinion. All right, so we have an obstacle. So an obstacle, progress is stopped. let's see. Must backtrack and go around. Spend turn retreating. Let's see, and then and renavigate. I know this is not going to make a whole bunch of sense the way I've gotten rid of it, but basically, an obstacle, something that is not easy to cross. It's not. Remember, these obstacles we're dealing abstract here. If the obstacle is like a little pond and you can just walk around the pond, that's not really an obstacle. But maybe it's a pond and then a whole bunch of wetlands. There's a whole a whole big kind of swampy area you've gone into, or a ravine, or hey, chasms, uh, a big rock fall that's just like, yeah, there's some kind of whatever it is, right? We're in a fantasy campaign, so who knows how this huge rock fall got here, or why this big crack opened up in the earth, or whatever, but it's here, and it seems to be running for miles. Maybe it runs the entire length of this particular hex. So you're going to have to, and maybe even go, maybe it's not even go around, but you're going to have to detour, I guess. Must to detour into a neighboring obviously not the adjacent X can't be the one you're going to. I'll have to probably have to clean this up later. So progress been slowed, the trail's gone kind of wonky. We can still follow it or we cannot, right? You have a decision space. So you can turn all of these into decision spaces. Maybe I should make a note about that too. Think of these options as invitations to adventure or spend the time and resources. And I'll plug that one at the bottom of here. All right. Brian says, maybe the trail you're on suddenly dries up or is obscured, gone. Yeah, that could be one too. Yep. Yep. I mean, I don't know, what would that be? I suppose you could use that. I suppose that's an obstacle, right? You're on a trail and the trail dies. That would be another. On the current. Let's see, what's the course? Reorient. Yeah, so that could be totally an obstacle, right? It's whatever it is. It's if this one's progress is slowed, maybe I should even just take out obstacle. So I'll bold this one. So progress is slowed, and this one's progress is stopped. One thing I don't like is the bold doesn't really feel bold. There we go. I'll do that. Okay, yeah, really, they're bold on this app. It does not feel. I mean, you could kind of tell it's bold, but not that good. And one thing we can do, if we wanted to, is we've got. So if you're, and a lot of people are fans of this, right? This is the. Um, let's see. I'm sorry, I might go. Pop that out here. we could combine these two if we wanted to. Also. Oh, okay. I mean, we could. I'm just kind of filling these in. I don't have it fully. Monster encounter. Far. I don't know what the odds. Never tell me the odds. But you could have something like that as well. Brian says maybe progress is sped up in the wrong direction. You fall into an underground river and get rushed away. You could do that. I mean, some of these things, it kind of depends, right? So it's going to be very your miles may vary kind of thing, right? What you want to abstract away and what you want to play out. If there's a fast moving river, like if there's an event, I guess if there's an event like that, I probably want to play it a bit more than have it just be like, oops, you fell into an underground river, got rushed away. It feels like kind of a board gamey, like you're playing shoots and arrows, or shoots and ladders, and you got or snakes and ladders, depending on which version you had, and you end up on the snake of the chute, you just go wee, you're down there. You totally could do that, but you might not want to. But yeah, what we could do is have progress wrong direction. Which would be your classic kind of pick a spot. Direction. Let's see. Party position moves to a different adjacent hex than intended. And the other thing is you have time, right? Because if you're diddling around here spending extra time, then nightfall is coming. You don't have a chance to do other things. Maybe you then have to camp somewhere you didn't want to camp, yada, yada, yada. So there's another kind of tumbler going on, which is the fact that, and time could also be, depending on how you are running your encounters, if you're doing a day-night kind of thing, does it sort of become nightfall? And the night will then slow you down, and maybe you get more to get lost, so on and so forth. So there's really, you can play with a lot of different aspects here that can, not only does it help the world seem kind of dynamic and maybe dangerous and interesting, but it's those decision points. Hey, it's getting dark, but we've been taking too long. Do we press on into the night knowing that now our next choice is maybe even more open to being to getting wrong because we need to try to make a progress? Or do we try to camp here? But camping here, we're in kind of a wetlands area, and I know that swamps are nastier than the woods that are beyond us. So should we try to press through to get to the woods and then camp? Right? There's all kinds of really interesting decisions that you have, and I think a lot of people find that they're not able to generate decisions for their party in the wilderness. But these are all things that lead to decisions, and all these decisions are meaningful and they matter, because encounters in the wilderness, if you're playing them kind of vanilla by the book and like a BX OSC style, they can be incredibly dangerous. So it matters if you're going to make that roll. If you make that roll, for example, for encounters, a swamp, there's a 50% chance of an encounter, versus woods, there's a 33% chance, versus if you can get to the grasslands, there's a 16% chance of an encounter. So if you have a choice between trying to stay out of the swamps, grassland swamps, whatever, like that's a big deal. It's not a nothing. That is a real decision that might have real impact, especially when the stuff that you may get in these swamps is going to be of a deadlier variety than you might probably get in the grasslands. Moto Dragon asks if there's any chance of an example of hex crawl gameplay with Daniel at some point. I mean, one never know. We could try. Yeah, I don't know. It's I might. Sure. I don't know if would maybe with Daniel, would do with somebody else. Yeah, we could probably do something. In fact, I have a scenario I need to, once I finish some of this other stuff that I to kind of work out, that's kind of hex crawly. So maybe I can figure out a way to figure out a way to integrate those two things together. But there's really, like I said, I think people overcomplicate. It's really not that. It's not that complex. I think unfortunately, because they didn't unify sort of the dungeon exploration rules, which get people confused all the time, and then with wilderness, they kind of just they just didn't. They could have made it easier by mirroring dungeon exploration, wilderness exploration. And yes, there's some differences, but a lot of it is very much the same. We still have these kind of clockwork gears moving that are activating things, and I think it might have helped people. And obviously, the original idea was you'd start with dungeons and then move in the wilderness. And I think it probably would have helped a lot of people to see that more and to have rules that kind of do a better job of marrying them together and showing like, hey, the stuff you've been doing in the dungeon, guess what? Yeah, there's some tweaks and things, but it's pretty darn similar to stuff you do in the wilderness. And that other aspect of, I think that much like you would never you would never put a time on how much time the party's going to spend in a hallway because you don't know. They might go across in a turn. They might spend 6 turns diddling around and whatever that is in real time. I think people also make the mistake of trying to set a time on there, how long we're going to hex crawl through a thing. And sometimes the party might just breeze through something because they don't get the encounters and they decide that they are very focused on their destination. So they're not, you might come into it thinking like, oh man, I got this whole session. We're going to be hex crawling. And then you're looking at it and you're starting to panic because the party is going to be through the hex crawl in half the time you thought they were because they're just not biting. And then I think you start to make errors. Maybe this goes along with what I was saying yesterday about pacing, where you just like, oh no, I got to slow down their progress. Let me throw things in front of them and let me do this and that. And then it kind of turns the whole thing into a slog. So, okay. Was there anything else? So we got progress was slowed and see. Oh yeah, we also have. Well, let's see. So we can. So uh to Brian's point, we could probably put this. We could have a hazard. Party is stuck. Party is stuck. Maybe there's a potential for injury. Stuck or trapped. I'll spend. Now I'm putting these expedition kind of things on there because if you really don't want to, you or the party, like I guess I'd say like there's options here, right? Maybe not with the monster encounter though. Maybe I will rewrite these. Uh, Progress is slow. Progress stop. Progress in one direction. Hazard. Kind of wandering. Lair. Feel free to, if you change these, we can change them up. We can do different things, but basically, so this kind of new idea would be, and let's just roll out a table because let's create the table. Let's gleam the cube. Let's finish it. What the heck is what's way over here? Oh, is there a frame? Oh, I think I moved all that stuff over and then I didn't move the frame over. Silly me, silly me. All right, so let's has there been a misadventure? Question mark. We're gonna roll. Remember D6. We'll start with a D6, and then we can modify it. So we're gonna say on a 1. Yes. I guess we can bullet this point out. 22. on, whoops. No, not on a 2. Oh, on a 2 plus. No. Okay, there we go. Now let's. So here's what I'm going to do. And, I don't know if, like I said, I'm kind of just doing this as I go. So let's make some terrain modifiers for this roll. Yes. So we'll say woods +1. And Ouija doesn't really have a good, I don't think has tables. It has a good table thing. Otherwise, I would put this in a table. So we can kind of put these all together. Woods, barrens, hills, mountains. I'm not worried about ocean at the moment, so I'm not going to put that in there. Swamp. Or I guess I'll go desert, jungle, swamp. Or so I should say -2. Oops. -1. Bo says a grasslands hazard could be a wildfire sweeping across the hex, but the party have an opportunity to escape if they act quickly. Yep. A lightning strike, or even either other something else weather related. A storm suddenly springs up, a tornado. Yeah, there's a flooding from weather that happened in another day, but now it's flooding from different parts. Yeah, it could be a wildfire. Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, this is where you as a GM, this is your chance to shine, to show everybody what does Faramir say in the movie, to show your quality, right? That's it. You think about, where are you? I mean, you don't need this whole table to do that. This really, what I'm trying to do here with the whole misadventure thing, is just add a little bit more color to just that lost, just so you get an idea. Now they tell you lost means moving off direction, but they don't tell you what it means, or they don't tell you why. Say that's just the end result. I'm just trying to give you some extra color and a little extra detail, but ultimately you're going to have to take these things and go with it on, go with it and figure it out what it means. So yeah, is it a wildfire? Is it a flood? Is it something else? Did a sinkhole open up? Did whatever happen? Are there giants running loose? Maybe there's monsters, and here we're talking about maybe you can get away. And we could probably break this down. It might make more sense to put this in a 2d6 table so we can play around with the percentages a little bit and get some better odds, which I might do. But yeah, I mean that's kind of what you got to figure it out. Is it full of gopher holes? Feral golfers, as Terrence says. Absolutely. Right. This is where you're going to be filling it in. And hopefully people will find that maybe this little bit of added bit here will allow them open their mind a little bit to help them, give them a little bit of inspiration as to what it could be. But yeah, ultimately that's where you're going to be stepping in the situation and saying, okay, so now we got these terrain modifiers, and then if we wanted to, we can have some environmental modifiers. So we could say night travel -1 on a well-trod path. Oh yeah, and if right, -1 inclement weather, -1, -2 if severe. And then if we want to have some character modifiers, we can do that. Let's character modifiers. Ranger type, maybe +2. Let's say some kind of wilderness background +1. Doesn't stack with Ranger. Don't get them both. There we go. Something like that. So we can make a single roll. Has there been a misadventure? Roll a d6. Heck, you can have the party roll the d6. Get a 1, it is. 1 is not. And we can add this if you want to make this 6. Because maybe you're going to probably have more positive modifiers than negative. We can swap that around too. But basically, you're going to roll a die, and then if it's mountains, so basically, if you're in the grasslands, it's just a flat 1 and 6. If it's desert, if it's your woods, barrens, hills, or mountains, you subtract 1 from the roll. If you want to change those, I kind of like having a little bit more of a curve to it in terms of, or just ramping up. So I would probably spread these out a little bit. But actually, since you're only doing 1 and 2 modifiers, essentially, they're really just going to have 1s and 2s. But, you could swap those out for whatever you like. You could add some environmental modifiers if you want. You could also have, maybe making it a high roll is probably better just for the mathiness of it. But, whatever. Make it a 6+. You're on a 6+, and then you could add stuff to it. That probably might be easier. Let's just do this on 6+, 5 or less. All right, let's do that. Just to make it, I think that might be a little bit easier. +1, +1, 2. Whoops. How did I close that? I did that. There we go. And then -2. You could probably make this -1 and -1 because I imagine if you're a ranger type, you probably have a wilderness background. And I mean like a background, like, oh, I was born I'm Conan. I'm from the wilds of Samaria. Okay, get bonus. Terrence says Gopher Kid golfers in a brutal range war with prairie dog folk piggy polo league. That's definitely something. That is a turf war, as Bo says. That is a turf war. All right, so we've gone through the hour. What have we got? What have we learned? I don't know. Hopefully I've helped some folks. This will show up somewhere. I might play around, probably tweak this up a little bit. I do like the idea of kind of combining the encounter with the lost into just this kind of misadventure thing and just folding monsters into there. Hopefully I've given you some inspiration if you've been struggling with what to do with things getting lost, with your party getting lost, or even thinking about dishing getting lost, and maybe this is giving you an idea of what you can do with it. Turn it into something. And the other thing I would say is if your party is, even if you're just using the standard getting lost, roll up something in those hexes. Like turn it into something. Turn this empty hex you're in into having a manor house. You're over in here and the party's trying to go into this hex and up here. Put an abandoned manor house that's haunted by wights. Put some barrow downs in here. Put a big hole in the ground with stuff coming out. Like really have some fun. And especially if you've got some overriding campaign or something thematically that's happened in this area, use that to really come in. Use it as, oh, they went the wrong way and now the enemy has caught up to them, or they see fire in the distance, or have some fun. Don't just turn it. Remember that the die hitting a, I don't know, quote unquote fail state, if that's when you want to look at it, should not be your game table fail state. Use everything, all this stuff, just invitation to just have more adventures and have fun. Hope that makes sense, and I hope it's helpful. Bo says that I'm trying to be a legit stream, and I have, I have dad jokes in the commentary. Don't worry about it because I make plenty of dad jokes on my own. My daughter laments all the dad jokes that I make. What did I do? Oh, somehow I did something here. I will have to fix my poor map. Maybe just got too big sometime. There we go. There's something else hidden underneath there. Oh, it's good. All right. Like I said, I will I will write this up in some form. Might not be right away because I'm gonna tweak it, play with it. But obviously, you can see here on the stream, and I'm not doing anything revolutionary. I really just want to encourage folks: don't ditch the lost mechanic. Maybe just twist it, shape it, mold it into something that is useful for your campaign. But I would guarantee there's probably something interesting you can do with it. So before you think about just getting rid of it, think about how you can turn it to suit your needs. Bo says, if all else fails, Grandmother Will and her gift of the magically delicious case can show up. Yeah, or Baba Yaga and their hut, or Broodmother Sky Fortress. There's a hole can open the ground, a portal to fairy, an elemental gate. Like there are really just no amount stuff. A goblin army, like all kinds of stuff can show up and use it. Use it, right? But if you get to the end of the day and none of this stuff does anything for you, then don't, because it is your game, right? And you do with it as you will. All right, folks. Well, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm pretty sure tomorrow I want to get back into Dune, but who knows if some other fancy strikes me. We'll see. But that's all I got. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.